Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands and stared at the twisted metal in front of him, thinking that this job was going to be harder than he thought. But that was normal for him now 50 years after. Earth joined the Galactic Coalition and humans still got the jobs nobody else wanted to touch. The repair bay on Epsilon Crossing Station hummed with activity all around him. Aliens of every shape and size moving through the corridors. But they gave his section a wide berth because everyone knew the human worked with dangerous equipment. The kind that could kill most species in seconds. Chun. His supervisor's voice crackled through his comm, which was a four-armed Quilloth who managed the station's maintenance division. "We have an emergency situation. Are you available?" Marcus grabbed his toolkit and headed toward the main bay, wondering what kind of mess waited for him this time. Because emergency on an alien station usually meant something was leaking, exploding, or about to do both at once. When he arrived at Docking Bay 7, he saw a crowd of aliens standing at a safe distance from a sleek silver yacht, and he could tell from their body language that something was very wrong. The Quilloth supervisor waved two of his arms. Frantically, "The Princess of the Volcari Empire has a radiation leak in her engine core," the supervisor explained quickly, his translator making his panic sound even more urgent. "Nobody can go in there. The radiation levels would kill anyone in minutes. But the princess cannot leave without repairs." Marcus looked at the yacht and then at the readouts on the nearby console, seeing that the radiation was indeed high but not impossibly so by human standards. Earth had plenty of places with similar or worse radiation, and humans had been dealing with nuclear accidents for centuries. "I can do it," Marcus said simply, and the crowd of aliens gasped as if he had just volunteered to jump into a star. "Human, you do not understand." A crystalline figure stepped forward, her body made of what looked like living diamond that caught the light in rainbow patterns. And Marcus realized this must be someone important from the Volcari delegation. That level of radiation will damage your cellular structure. It is certain death. Marcus shrugged and started pulling on his protective gear, which by alien standards was barely anything at all. Just a basic rad suit and some shielding equipment the humans use for routine maintenance. "I've worked in worse. Trust me." The crystalline alien who he learned was named Clara and served as an advisor tried to argue, but Marcus was already heading toward the yacht's entry ramp, his toolkit in hand and his suit's radiation badges clipped to his chest inside the yacht. Everything was beautiful and delicate, designed for beings who valued art and elegance over durability. The walls shimmered with holographic displays, and the furniture looked like it would break if he sat on it too hard, which was a common problem Marcus had with alien furnishings. He made his way to the engine room and immediately felt the heat on his skin, even through the suit. His badges starting to change color as they absorbed radiation. But he had maybe 40 minutes before things got really dangerous, which was more than enough time if he worked fast. The engine core was a masterpiece of Volcari technology. All crystalline matrices and energy fields that humans were still trying to fully understand. But a crack in the containment field was obvious even to him. Coolant was leaking, and the whole system was minutes away from a meltdown. Marcus pulled out his tools and got to work, bypassing the damaged sections and rerouting power through secondary systems, improvising solutions that would make Volcari engineers weep, but would definitely keep the ship from exploding. And halfway through the repair, he pulled out his lunch, a sandwich he had packed that morning, and ate while he worked because why waste time? The aliens monitoring from outside watched their sensors in disbelief as the human moved through lethal radiation like it was nothing more than a mild inconvenience. Working with his bare hands on systems that required the Volcari to use remote drones from safe distances, 28 minutes after entering, Marcus emerged from the yacht, his suit covered in coolant and various fluids, his radiation badges flashing warnings that would have sent alien medical teams into crisis mode. but he just peeled them off and tossed them in the disposal unit, all fixed, he announced. Wiping his hands on a rag, the containment field is patched, and I rerouted the coolant system. Should be good for another few thousand light years at least. The crowd stared at him in stunned silence. And then a voice rang out clear and melodious like crystal chimes. You walked into certain death and returned as if it were merely an afternoon stroll. How is this possible? Marcus turned and saw her for the first time, Princess Lyras of the Valkyrie Empire. And she was stunning in a way that transcended species. Her crystalline form rising 7 feet tall and refracting light into patterns that seemed almost alive. Her multifaceted eyes fixed on him, with an intensity that made him suddenly self-conscious about the grease stains on his coveralls. I mean, it wasn't that bad, Marcus said, trying to sound professional. Humans come from Earth, which has pretty high radiation in some places. Plus, we've been working with nuclear power for a long time, so our bodies can handle it better than most species. Earth, the death world, Clara whispered. And Marcus heard the term that aliens always used for his planet. A world so dangerous that most species considered it uninhabitable, with its crushing gravity, violent weather, and aggressive fauna. Yeah, home sweet home, Marcus replied with a grin. Look, Your Highness, your ship is safe to board now. The radiation levels are back to normal. You can continue your journey. But Princess Lyras didn't move toward her ship. Instead, she continued to stare at Marcus, her crystalline body starting to glow with an inner light that her advisor seemed to find alarming. Princess, we must depart, Clara urged. The schedule. Bring him to my ship tonight, Princess Lyras interrupted, her voice carrying absolute authority. I wish to thank the human properly for his service. But Princess, he is a Death Worlder. It is not. Clara began tonight, the princess repeated. And then she swept toward her yacht, her entourage scrambling to follow. But she paused at the ramp and looked back at Marcus one more time, her eyes gleaming with something he couldn't quite identify after she left. Marcus stood there confused while his supervisor patted him on the back with 2 of his 4 arms. Well, Chun, you have caught the attention of royalty. Try not to start an interspecies incident. Marcus laughed nervously, not knowing that his life had just changed forever. Not understanding that in that moment when he walked out of the radiation-fearless and impossibly alive princess, Lyras had made a decision that would shake the foundations of the Galactic Coalition that night. As he prepared for dinner with an alien princess, Marcus Chun had no idea that he was about to become part of history, or that a simple engine repair would lead him on a journey across the stars. Because sometimes fate chooses the most unlikely heroes, and sometimes those heroes are just mechanics who showed up to do their job. Marcus stood outside the private dining chamber wearing the cleanest coveralls he owned, which still had a few oil stains that wouldn't come out. And he wondered if he should have borrowed something fancier from one of the human diplomats stationed on Epsilon Crossing. The Parthenon Crossing. Door opened with a soft chime, and Clara greeted him, her crystalline face somehow managing to convey disapproval, even though she had no features in the human sense. The princess has been expecting you, human. Please try not to break anything. Inside, the dining room was breathtaking walls that seemed to be made of liquid starlight, furniture that looked grown rather than built, and floating orbs that provided gentle illumination. Everything designed with the Valkyrie appreciation for beauty that made human art look crude. By comparison, Princess Lyras rose from her seat, her form catching the light in 1,000 different ways, and she gestured toward a chair that had been specially reinforced. Marcus could see the modifications made to handle human weight and strength. Welcome, Marcus Chun, she said warmly, and hearing his name in her crystalline voice made something flutter in his chest. Please, be seated and comfortable. Marcus sat down carefully, trying not to think about how much the chair probably cost. And a server brought out the first course, something that looked like sculpture more than food. All delicate spirals and crystalline garnishes. "This is quite an honor," Marcus said. Attempting diplomacy. "I really just did my job, you know. No big deal. You walked into death and emerged unscathed," Princess Lyra's replied, leaning forward with interest. "To you this may be routine, but to my people it is the stuff of legends. We Valkyrie are researchers and artists, not warriors or daredevils." The meal continued, and Marcus quickly discovered that Valkyrie dyeing customs were very different from human ones. The decorative crystals on the side were apparently edible and crunchy, which he discovered by accident when he thought they were just garnish. And the main course was served at a temperature that the princess called pleasantly warm, but Marcus felt was barely above freezing when he reached for what he thought was a glass of water. Lyra gasped in horror. "That is the ceremonial washing crystal, not for consumption." "Sorry," Marcus said quickly, pulling his hand back. And Princess Lyra's made a sound like wind chimes, laughing. "Please, do not worry," the princess assured him, and her eyes sparkled with amusement. "Cultural differences are expected. In fact, I find your reactions quite delightful. You approach everything with such directness." They talked through the meal about Earth and the Valkyrie homeworld. She was fascinated by human resilience and adaptation. How humans had survived on a planet that should have killed them 1,000,000 times over. While Marcus was amazed by the Valkyrie civilization that had achieved spaceflight through pure logic and mathematics, rather than trial and error, then dessert arrived. A glowing purple cube that Lyra presented with great ceremony. "This is the flame of Valkar, a delicacy so intense that most species can only tolerate the smallest portion. It is considered a great test of fortitude." Marcus, not wanting to be rude, popped the entire cube in his mouth and chewed thoughtfully while the Valkyrie watched in shock. It had a slight tingle to it. Maybe a bit spicy, like a mild pepper. Nothing compared to the hot wings he and his friends used to eat back on Earth. "This is pretty good," Marcus said enthusiastically. "Do you have more?" Princess Lyra stared at him, her crystalline body beginning to glow brighter, which Lyra had explained was a sign of strong emotion in Valkyrie. You consume the entire portion and feel nothing but pleasure? That substance is rated as potentially lethal to most carbon-based life forms." "Really?" Marcus looked at the empty plate. "Honestly, it's milder than Earth food. We have this thing called ghost peppers that—" "Ghost peppers?" The princess interrupted, fascinated. "Yeah. They're these chilies that are so hot they can cause actual pain. But humans eat them for fun," Marcus explained. "We even have competitions to see who can eat the most. Your species consumes toxins for entertainment," Lyra said faintly. This explains so much about human behavior. After dinner, Princess Lyra dismissed her attendants and led Marcus to a private observation deck where the stars stretched out in glorious display. And here in the quiet, her demeanor changed. She seemed less like royalty and more like someone carrying a heavy burden. "I have not been entirely forthright with you, Marcus Chen," she said softly, her light dimming to something more subdued. "I did not invite you here merely to express gratitude." "Okay," Marcus said, leaning against the railing. "What's really going on?" She explained the proving journey, an ancient tradition where Valkyrie heirs must collect 3 sacred relics from dangerous locations across the galaxy to prove their worthiness to rule. And Marcus listened as she described how her people were brilliant but fragile, how these journeys usually took decades with armies of protection. "I have only 6 months," Princess Lyra continued, her voice tight with stress. "If I fail, my cousin Dexler will take the throne. And he believes in military expansion and conquest. He would turn our peaceful empire into a war machine. and drag the coalition into conflicts that could destroy the balance we have worked so hard to achieve. That's rough, Marcus said sympathetically. But you seem smart and capable. Why not just hire the best security team money can buy? Because the proving must test the heir's judgment and worthiness, not their wealth, she replied. Ancient law allows only one companion, a proving partner who must be chosen by instinct. Someone unbound to the empire who the heir trusts absolutely. Marcus was starting to see where this was going, and his stomach did a small flip. And you think, when I saw you emerge from that radiation, fearless and strong, doing what should have been impossible with such casual confidence, Princess Lyra's turned to face him fully, her eyes intense. I knew. The Valkyrie can sense resonance between souls. Compatibility on a level deeper than logic or reason. Wait. You're saying you want me to come with you on this dangerous quest across the galaxy? Marcus asked, trying to process this. I'm just a mechanic. You are a human, she corrected gently. You are adaptable, resilient, and possess instincts that have kept your species alive on a world that should have destroyed you. These are exactly the qualities I need. Before Marcus could respond, Lyra burst onto the observation deck with several other Valkyrie nobles, all of them glowing with agitation. Princess, you cannot be serious about this human. He is untrained, unrefined. He broke a ceremonial crystal with his handshake earlier. That was an accident, Marcus protested weakly. Princess Lyra drew herself up to her full height, her body blazing with light now, radiating authority. By the ancient laws of our people, I declare my choice before witnesses. She pointed directly at Marcus, a voice ringing with absolute certainty that echoed across the deck. That is my partner. Marcus Chen of Earth will accompany me on the proving journey. Let it be recorded and made law. The Valkyrie nobles erupted in shocked chatter. Lyra looked like she might shatter from stress, and Marcus stood there still holding a napkin from dinner, his mind racing because he had just been volunteered for a galactic quest by an alien princess. And the crazy part was that somewhere deep down, he wanted to say yes, not just because refusing would cause a diplomatic incident, or because the fate of an empire hung in the balance, but because, when Princess Lyra looked at him with those multifaceted eyes full of hope and trust, something in him responded, something that said this was important, that she was important, that maybe fate had bigger plans than just fixing engines. So, Marcus said finally, trying to sound calmer than he felt, when do we leave? 3 days later, Marcus found himself aboard the princess's yacht, officially named the Sonde, Crystalline Dawn, but which he had started mentally, calling the fancy ship as they jumped through hyperspace toward their first destination. And he was still trying to wrap his head around how quickly his life had changed. His supervisor had been surprisingly enthusiastic about giving him extended leave, probably because having a human accompany Valkyrie royalty was great publicity for Earth. And the Coalition Diplomatic Corps had sent him approximately 700 pages of briefing documents that he mostly hadn't read. The Forge Moon orbits a dying star in the Kessler system, Princess Lyra explained, displaying a holographic image of their destination. It has 2.5 times Earth gravity, an atmosphere composed primarily of sulfur compounds, and active volcanism across 70% of its surface. Sounds like a vacation spot, Marcus joked. But Lyra didn't seem to find it funny. For a human, perhaps it is tolerable, Lyra said sourly, still unhappy about the entire arrangement. For Valkyrie, it is a nightmare. Our crystalline structure requires constant temperature regulation, and the gravity alone could crack our forms. Zexith, the princess's bodyguard, who looked like a walking tank made of dark purple crystal, nodded grimly. We will require full exosuits and constant medical monitoring just to survive on the surface. Marcus looked at the data and realized that what was a death trap for most species was merely uncomfortable. For humans, Earth's gravity was already high by galactic standards, and humans had explored volcanoes for centuries. Plus, the sulfur atmosphere was nasty, but manageable with the right breathing equipment. The Crystal of First Light is located in a temple complex built into an extinct volcanic caldera. Princess Lyra's continued, zooming in on the target location. According to ancient records, it was placed there specifically because the location would test the worthiness of those who sought it. Let me guess, Marcus said, studying the terrain. The extinct part is debatable. Seismic readings suggest the volcano may be entering a new active phase, she admitted, her light dimming with worry. We must retrieve the crystal and depart before any major eruption occurs. When they arrived at the forged moon, Marcus got his first real look at the challenge ahead. The viewport showed a hellscape of glowing lava flows, ash clouds, and jagged volcanic rock that stretched to the horizon. Beautiful in a terrifying way that reminded him of old pictures from Hawaii or Iceland, but cranked up to 11. They landed the yacht at a safe distance and began preparations. The Valkyrie crew suited up in bulky exosuits that looked like they could withstand anything but moved with all the grace of refrigerators, while Marcus just pulled on his basic environmental suit and breathing mask. You are not wearing proper protection, Clara protested when she saw him. The gravity will crush you, the heat will cook you, the atmosphere will poison you. I'll be fine, Marcus assured her, doing some stretches to prepare his muscles. This is actually lighter than the training gravity chambers back on Earth. The journey from the landing site to the temple took 6 hours, and it became immediately clear that Marcus was going to be doing most of the heavy literally, because the Valkyrie struggled with every step, even in their exosuits. Their movements slow and labored, while Marcus moved with relative ease, helped them over obstacles, spotted weak ground before anyone stepped on it. And when a minor lava flow cut off their planned path, he found an alternate route through a network of cooled lava tubes that made Clara sensors scream warnings about structural instability. This tunnel could collapse at any moment. She transmitted over the comm, her voice tight with fear. Yeah, but it probably won't, Marcus replied, his human instinct for risk assessment telling him the tubes were stable enough for a quick crossing. Come on, I'll guide you through, Princess Lyra's, despite her own fear, chose to trust him. She followed Marcus into the dark tunnel with its walls still warm from ancient lava. And behind her, the rest of the crew reluctantly followed. Because if their princess was brave enough to trust the human, then they had to be too inside the temple complex. They found architecture that predated modern Valkyrie civilization, massive carved pillars covered in crystalline script, chambers filled with artifacts from a more mystical age. And at the center of it all sat the Crystal of First Light on a pedestal surrounded by deep channels of flowing lava. The trial is clear, Princess Lyra said quietly. Reading the ancient inscriptions, one must cross the channels and retrieve the crystal while the mountain watches. To prove courage and determination. The mountain watches? Marcus asked, confused, and the ground shook, and he understood. The supposedly extinct volcano was waking up. Magma rising through vents in the floor. The entire temple starting to shift as tectonic forces activated after centuries of dormancy. We need to abort, Zexith shouted, already backing toward the exit. The structure is compromised. But Marcus was looking at the crystal and calculating 30 meters to the pedestal. Narrow bridges over lava channels, extreme heat that his suit could handle for maybe 10 minutes. And a collapsing building that would bury the crystal under tons of rock if they left now. I can make it, he said. And before anyone could stop him, he was running. The heat hit him immediately, even through the suit. Sweat breaking out across his skin as he sprinted across the first bridge. The stone cracked under his weight, but held just long enough for him to reach the other side, where he had to jump a gap that opened as the floor buckled. Princess Lyra's watched in horror and awe as Marcus moved with desperate speed, his human reflexes and balance letting him navigate terrain that would have killed any Valkyrie. And when a pillar collapsed right in front of him, he didn't even pause. Just vaulted over the debris and kept going. He reached the pedestal just as a massive tremor shook the entire complex, grabbed the crystal of first light, and turned to find that his exit route had disappeared. The bridges were gone. The floor was breaking apart, and lava was rising fast. "Marcus!" The princess screamed over the cum. "You must jump. I will try to catch you." It was a crazy idea. She wanted him to jump a 10-meter gap while carrying a priceless artifact. But Marcus had learned that sometimes the only way forward was to trust and leap. So he did. He launched himself across the chasm with all the strength his earthborn muscles could muster. The crystal clutched to his chest and his trajectory carrying him toward where Princess Lyra stood with her arms extended, her exosuit's enhanced strength ready to catch him. They collided hard enough that her suit's safety alarms went off. But she held on, her crystalline form glowing so bright it lit up the entire chamber as she absorbed the impact. And together they stumbled backward away from the collapsing floor. "Run!" Marcus yelled, and they all fled the temple as it came down behind them. The volcano fully awakening now and sending fountains of lava high into the toxic sky. They made it back to the yacht with minutes to spare, everyone collapsing inside as the ship lifted off and rocketed away from the forged moon, which was now erupting with spectacular violence that would render the entire surface uninhabitable for the next 1,000 years in the main cabin. After they had all caught their breath and removed their suits, Princess Lyra's held up the crystal of first light, a flawless diamond-like gem that pulsed with inner luminescence. Proof that the first trial was complete. "That was impossible," Lyra said, still shaking from the experience. "You carried us through a collapsing volcano as if it were a morning stroll. It was pretty intense," Marcus admitted, his legs aching from the strain. "But humans are good at running from disasters. We've had a lot of practice." Princess Lyra's approached him, her eyes fixed on his face with an intensity that made his heart race. "You risked your life for a crystal you do not even believe in, for a trial that means nothing to your people. I did it because you needed it," Marcus said simply, "and because you trusted me enough to make that crazy jump." Her crystalline form began to glow, brighter and brighter, until everyone else in the room quietly excused themselves, leaving Marcus and the princess alone. And she reached out one delicate hand to touch his arm. "When I caught you," she said softly, "when our energies met in that moment of trust and desperation, I felt something I have never experienced before, resonance so strong it sang through my entire being." Marcus felt it too, though he couldn't name it, something that went beyond physical attraction or even friendship, a connection that transcended species and culture. And he realized that this journey was changing him just as much as it was testing the princess. "2 more trials to go," he said, trying to lighten the moment, but his voice came out rougher than intended. "2 more trials," she agreed, her hand still on his arm, her light warming his skin. Together, and in that moment, Marcus knew that whatever happened next, whatever dangers they faced, he would see this through to the end, because sometimes fate chooses unlikely heroes, and sometimes those heroes choose back. News of Princess Lyra's choosing a human partner spread through the Galactic Coalition faster than a hyperspace jump, and reactions ranged from fascination to outrage, depending on who you asked. But the person most upset was Prince Thexler, the princess's cousin, who had been expecting an easy path to the throne. Marcus first learned about Thexler during a secure communication that interrupted their journey to the second trial. The prince's face appeared on their view screen, all sharp angles and dark crystal with eyes that glowed red instead of the princess's warm gold. "Dear cousin," Dexler said with false sweetness, "I hear you have chosen a pet Deathworlder to help you with the proving. How charming and utterly desperate. My choice is legitimate under our laws," Princess Lyra's replied coolly, though Marcus could see her light flickering with anger. "Marcus Chen is my properly declared partner." "Oh, I am not contesting the legality," the prince said, smiling in a way that made Marcus's instincts scream danger. "I am merely pointing out that the proving journey is meant to test worthiness, and what better test than actual opposition? I have taken the liberty of hiring some associates to ensure your trials are appropriately challenging. You would send mercenaries after your own cousin?" Lyra gasped, horrified. "I am ensuring the legitimacy of her claim," Dexler said smoothly. "If she cannot handle obstacles, then she is not fit to rule. Surely you understand this logic. And if the human proves inadequate, well then perhaps that will demonstrate the folly of cross-species partnerships." The transmission ended and everyone on the bridge sat in shocked silence until Marcus spoke up. "So your cousin is a real piece of work, huh?" "Dexler has always believed that power should be taken by force," Princess Lyra said quietly, her light dimming with worry. "He sees compassion as weakness and cooperation as foolishness. If he becomes emperor, he will reshape our civilization into something I barely recognize. Then we don't let him win." Marcus said firmly, "What's the second trial?" The Wraith Nebula was aptly named, a vast cloud of ionized particles and strange matter that played havoc with sensors and navigation systems. And according to ancient records, somewhere within its swirling chaos floated the crown of ancestors aboard a derelict ship from the old empire. The nebula's effects are amplified for telepathic species, Princess Lyra explained as they approached the edge of the phenomenon. Valkyrie will experience hallucinations, invasive thoughts, sensory distortions. It is psychological torture designed to test mental fortitude. What about humans? Marcus asked, watching the nebula's purple and green clouds swirl on the view screen. Your species lacks natural telepathic abilities, she said, which means you should be largely immune to the mental effects. Though the navigation challenges will still be considerable. They entered the nebula, and immediately Marcus saw the princess stiffen, her light beginning to flicker erratically as the psychic interference hit her like a wave. Lyra and Zexith fared even worse, their forms dimming as they struggled against visions only they could see. I am seeing things, Princess Lyra said through clenched teeth, her translator making her distress clear. My people suffering, our cities in flames. You lying dead at my feet. None of it is real, but it feels real. So terribly real. Marcus took her hand carefully, his human warmth grounding her. Focus on me, on what's actually here right now. I'm going to get us through this. He took manual control of the yacht and began navigating using only visual reference and basic instruments, his human pattern recognition kicking in as he spotted currents in the nebula that could guide them. And all the while he talked about Earth, about his childhood, about mundane things that kept the princess anchored to reality. Hours passed as they delved deeper into the nebula. The Valkyrie crew barely functional while Marcus held everything together. And finally they found it, the ancient ship floating in a pocket of stable space. Its hull covered in crystals grown over millennia. The crown is inside, Princess Lyra's managed to say, her voice strained, in the throne room at the ship's heart. But Marcus, I cannot think clearly. The visions are so strong. I'll go get it, Marcus said. You stay here and try to stay grounded. No, she said firmly, fighting through her distress. This trial is mine to face. I must prove I can endure mental hardship. You can guide me, but I must walk this path myself. So together they boarded the derelict ship, Marcus supporting the princess as she stumbled through corridors filled with ancient memories and psychic echoes that assaulted her mind, and he talked constantly, his voice a lifeline that kept her moving forward. They found the crown of ancestors in a chamber of breathtaking beauty, a circlet of living crystal that seemed to hold entire galaxies within its structure, sitting on a throne where some long-dead emperor had ruled. And Princess Lyra's reached for it with shaking hands. That's when the mercenaries struck. The ex-Lyra's hired killers materialized from the shadows where they had been waiting. Heavily armed aliens of various species who had been promised a fortune to eliminate the princess and make it look like an accident. Marcus had maybe 2 seconds of warning before the first shot, and he tackled Princess Lyra's behind the throne as energy bolts tore through the air where she had been standing. His mind raced because he was unarmed, outnumbered 6-1, and protecting someone who could barely stand. But humans had survived worse odds before, and Marcus had grown up on a death world where predators were fast, strong, and merciless, so he used the only advantages he had: unpredictability, environmental awareness, and the willingness to fight dirty. He grabbed a piece of broken railing and threw it at the nearest mercenary's head, then rolled left when they fired at where he had been, coming up behind a pillar that he immediately abandoned, because staying still meant death. The mercenaries were expecting honor combat, tactical formations, logical responses. Instead, they got a human who fought like a cornered animal, who used the ancient ship's architecture against them, who feinted left and went right, who played dead when convenient and struck from unexpected angles, who grabbed a dropped weapon and used it even though he had never trained with that model, because humans were adaptable and desperate and refused to quit. One mercenary went down when Marcus caused a ceiling panel to collapse on them. Another fell when he led them into a chamber where the psychic interference was strongest, watching the alien claw at their own head in madness, while Marcus's human brain barely registered the effect. He was bleeding from 6 wounds by the time he reached the last 3 mercenaries, his body screaming at him to stop. But Princess Lyra's was behind him, struggling to stay conscious, and the crown was right there. So he kept fighting because that's what humans did. They endured. The mercenaries finally made a mistake, bunching up to corner him, and Marcus triggered an explosive decompression by shooting out a weakened hull plate. The sudden atmosphere loss sucked 2 of them into space while he and the princess were protected by the throne's position. The last mercenary, realizing they were outmatched by a wounded human with nothing but determination, fled. Marcus stumbled back to Princess Lyra's, his vision swimming from blood loss, and he handed her the crown of ancestors. Got it. Though the retrieval was a bit messier than planned, she took the crown with trembling hands, but her eyes were on his injuries. "You are severely wounded. We must get you to medical after we get out of the nebula," Marcus insisted. "Can't let Dexler's people track us here." They made it back to the yacht, where Lyra immediately started treating Marcus's wounds with shaking hands, her medical scanner flashing, concerned because human physiology was strange and resilient. He was hurt badly enough to incapacitate most species, but still conscious and giving instructions for navigating out of the nebula. Princess Lyra sat beside him as Lyra worked, and suddenly she reached out and placed her crystalline hand directly on his worst wound. A bleed, deep gash across his ribs that was bleeding too freely. Her hand began to glow, and Marcus felt warmth spread through his body. Not just heat, but something deeper, a resonance that made his cells respond and his blood clot faster. The bleeding slowing as her bioenergy interfaced with his biology in a way that Lyra's medical scanner declared impossible. "The resonance is real," Lyra whispered in awe. "Your life forces are synchronizing. This should not be possible between species so different." But here it is, undeniable proof. When Princess Lyra's finally lifted her hand, exhausted from the effort, Marcus's wounds had stabilized. "You saved my life," she said softly. Again, and again you have put yourself between me and danger. Risking everything for someone you barely know. I know you well enough, Marcus replied. Fighting to stay conscious. I know you're brave and kind and trying to save your people from a war they don't want. That seems worth bleeding for. Her crystalline form glowed so bright that everyone had to look away. And Marcus realized this was love or something close to it. Maybe not human love exactly, but a connection just as powerful. Just as real. Just as terrifying. One more trial, she said, her voice full of emotion that her translator could barely convey. One more challenge and then we face Dexler's final move. Bring it on, Marcus said, and meant it. The depth station orbited an oceanic world called Aquos Prime, and according to the mission briefing, the third and final relic, the Sphere of Unity, was located in an underwater research facility at crushing depths that made human submarines look like children's toys. The station reported an accident 3 days ago. Princess Lyra's explained, studying the distress signals. Systems failures, structural damage. But the sphere should still be intact in the vault at the station's core. Let me guess, Marcus said. His wounds from the nebula still tender, but healing with surprising speed, thanks to their resonance bond. Dexler's mercenaries attacked the station to set up an ambush. Almost certainly, she agreed. But we have no choice without the Sphere of Unity. My proving is incomplete, and my cousin takes the throne. Zexith checked his weapons with grim determination. Then we go in expecting a fight. What they found when they reached the station was worse than expected. The entire structure was flooding. Emergency bulkheads failing one by one, and the pressure at that depth was enough to crush most species flat in seconds. But for humans who had explored Earth's deepest oceans, it was survivable with the right equipment. Marcus suited up in a deep dive exosuit that let him move through the water while the Valkyrie crew stayed aboard the yacht, monitoring from safety because their crystalline forms would shatter under that much pressure. And Princess Lyris hated every second of watching him descend alone. I am sending you sensor data, she transmitted over the comm, her voice tight with worry. The vault is 3 levels down, but the route is compromised. You will need to find alternate paths. Marcus swam through dark corridors, filled with emergency lighting that cast everything in red. And he found body station personnel who hadn't escaped the attack. Killed by weapons fire, not by drowning, which confirmed that Dexler had been here as he went deeper. Marcus heard voices ahead and slowed his approach, peeking around a corner to see a dozen armed mercenaries guarding the vault entrance. And in the center of their group stood Prince Dexler himself, his dark crystalline form unmistakable. So the human comes as expected, Dexler announced, somehow aware of Marcus's presence. How predictable my cousin is. Sending her pet Death Worlder to fetch the prize while she cowers in safety. Marcus stepped into view, his hand near his weapon. Pretty sure standing between you and what I came for isn't cowering. Brave words from a primitive, the prince said mockingly. But you are alone and outnumbered. Surrender now, and I will make your death quick. Counter proposal, Marcus said, and triggered his comm to broadcast on all frequencies. How about we settle this publicly so the entire Galactic Coalition can watch? Before Dexler could respond, Marcus had activated every camera in the station and established a live feed that was already spreading across Coalition networks. Billions of beings from hundreds of worlds suddenly had front row seats to the confrontation. You dare? Dexler began. I dare a lot, Marcus interrupted. See, you've been playing this off as testing the princess's worthiness. But everyone watching now knows the truth. You attacked civilians, hired mercenaries, and sabotaged your own cousin's legitimate proving. So let's talk about worthiness. Princess Lyra's, watching from the yacht, understood immediately what Marcus was doing. He was turning Dexler's ambush into a public trial. forcing the prince to either back down or reveal his true nature to the galaxy. "I challenge you." "Prince Vexlar," Marcus continued, "Valkyrie tradition allows trial by combat for disputes of honor. And I'm disputing your honor on behalf of Princess Lyra's. You fight me right here, right now. And we settle this properly." The mercenaries looked nervous, because killing someone on a live broadcast meant witnesses and consequences. While Vexlar's crystalline form glowed with rage. "You cannot challenge me. You are not Valkyrie." "No, but I'm the princess's officially declared proving partner," Marcus shot back, "which by your own ancient laws gives me the right to defend her honor. Or are you going to reject your own traditions?" Vexlar was trapped, and he knew it. Refusing would make him look weak. But accepting meant fighting under rules that were suddenly public. And Marcus was betting everything on the prince's arrogance. "Very well," Vexlar said coldly. "Valkyrie combat is mental, a battle of wills and psychic strength. You will face me in resonance battle, and when you fail, screaming and broken, the galaxy will see why humans should never have been allowed into coalition." "Princess," Marcus transmitted privately, "I need you to do something crazy. Trust me on this." The duel began, and immediately, Marcus realized he had made a terrible mistake. Valkyrie combat was psychic warfare, and he had no natural telepathic ability. Vexlar's mind crashed into his like a tidal wave, trying to crush his thoughts and will him into submission. But then Princess Lyra's did the impossible from the yacht above. She opened their resonance bond completely, flooding their connection with her own psychic power and creating a bridge that let Marcus access abilities he should never have possessed through their bond. Marcus could suddenly feel Vexlar's attacks and, more importantly, could respond, not with crystalline perfection, but with human stubbornness. Every time the prince tried to break his will, Marcus pushed back with earthborn resilience. The same adaptability that let humans survive extinction events and climb to the top of their world's food chain. Impossible. Vexlar roared, "You are human. You have no psychic capability." "I don't," Marcus agreed. His consciousness intertwined with Princess Lyra's in a way that made them almost one being. "But she does. And together we're something new." The battle raged across multiple levels of reality. Vexlar had raw power and centuries of training. But Marcus and Princess Lyra's had synchronization. Their bond, creating a flexible strength that adapted to every attack. Human determination merged with Valkyrie wisdom. Meanwhile, Marcus's body moved on autopilot, responding to the physical threats around him. When mercenaries tried to interfere, he fought them off even while his mind was locked in psychic combat. His Deathworld reflexes handling multiple challenges simultaneously in a way that made alien viewers gasp. The station continued to flood around them, water pressure increasing as more bulkheads failed. And Marcus had to fight the prince mentally while also keeping himself and everyone else from drowning. And the whole galaxy watched as a human did what should have been impossible finally, after what felt like hours, but was only minutes. Vexlar made a mistake. He tried to overwhelm Marcus with visions of failure, showing him Princess Lyra's death over and over, thinking this would break the human spirit. Instead, it made Marcus angry. And anger fueled by love and determination is a powerful thing. He pushed back through their bond with every memory of the journey so far, every moment of trust and connection, every reason why Princess Lyra deserved the throne. The prince's psychic assault shattered against human stubbornness and Valkyrie grace working together. And Vexlar stumbled physically, his crystalline form cracking as the feedback damaged him. "No, this cannot." "It can, and it did," Marcus said, standing over the fallen prince while water poured in around him. "You lose, she wins." And everyone saw it happen fairly. He grabbed a sphere of unity from the vault, a perfect orb that contained swirling galaxies within its crystalline structure, and made his way back to the yacht, leaving Dexlor to be arrested by coalition security forces that were already en route after watching the BROADCAST as Marcus surfaced and returned to the ship. Princess Lyra's S was waiting for him, and the moment he was inside, she threw herself at him with a force that would have knocked over most aliens. A crystalline form pressed against his armored suit. That was the most reckless, brilliant, terrifying thing I have ever witnessed, she said. Glowing so bright she lit up the entire bay. You gambled everything on a public challenge, and on our bond being strong enough to sustain psychic combat. I had faith in us, Marcus said simply, removing his helmet. Besides, humans are really good at improvising under pressure. Tlara approached with all three relics on a hovering platform: the Crystal of First Light, the Crown of Ancestors, and the Sphere of Unity. Together they proved Princess Lyris had completed the proving journey in record time. The council is already calling for a formal coronation, Tlara said, her earlier skepticism completely gone, and they are asking about the human. There are questions about his status. Marcus Chen is my chosen partner, Princess Lyris declared, her voice carrying absolute authority in all ways that matter. He will stand beside me as consort when I take the throne. Wait, consort? Marcus said, suddenly feeling like he had missed something important. Is that like, it means you are mine and I am yours, she said softly, turning to face him fully. If you choose to accept, which I hope you will, because I cannot imagine ruling without you. These past weeks have shown me that we are stronger together than apart. Marcus looked at this alien princess who had chosen him from across the stars, who had trusted him with her life and her throne. And he thought about how his life had changed from fixing engines to changing galactic history. And somehow it all made perfect sense. Yeah, he said, grinning despite his exhaustion. Yeah, I can do consort, though I'm keeping the mechanic coveralls for casual days.